Okay, welcome back to the School Story Podcast. My name is Spencer. I am here with Michelle Turek, and we're doing interviews today, and we're just talking leadership with Michelle. So, Michelle, I just want you to tell our audience about you, what you lead, where you're at, your location, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is such a great way to connect and get to know other leaders in other areas, and I think that's very powerful. I'm Michelle Turek. I am an elementary school principal, pre-K through sixth in Shiner, Texas. I've been in administration for almost 14 years. My experience is vast. I've been in Houston ISD and in rural and urban school communities, Title I socioeconomic and schools that were not Title I. So my experience is a little bit of everywhere. I've been in high school, I've been in junior high, and I've been in elementary, all in leadership positions. And elementary has been my home, and I love it. I am married. I have one son, and he's in fifth grade, and I have 3 dogs and 2 hermit crabs and a cat that has adopted us. So, just one big happy
Awesome.
family over here. Yeah.
That is awesome. So let me ask you, with your introduction, tell me a little bit about Houston ISD. It's like, if not one of the largest geographical cities in America. How
Mhm.
many, roughly, like how many kids do they have? What was that like?
Oh gosh. Okay, over 250 elementary schools. So I was the principal
Oh my
of an
gosh.
elementary school that was pre-K through fifth, and I had around 900 kids. Staff, faculty, about 100, if not more. Um, Houston ISD has, I believe, over 200,000 kids. I have to really dig deep and think about that, but it's massive. It's massive.
And off the top, I think it's one of the top 10 biggest school districts in the country. So I think
Yes.
you have
Yes.
like New York, obviously there's Florida has a really big one. There's
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles,
Hmm.
Houston, and
Hmm.
then the one in Las Vegas, Cache County is like huge because they cover Henderson and everything. But so I'm fascinated by that because you have 250 elementary schools and they
Yeah.
each are anywhere from 400 to 1,200 kids.
At least, yes. In the area we lived in, I mean, there were 6 neighborhood elementary schools just in our sort of community. So you had all of these elementaries, and then you would have a couple of middle schools, and then you had 1 or 2 high schools in this area that the kids would feed into. And a lot of these elementary schools were specialized. They would call them like magnet schools.
Okay.
So kids from different parts of Houston could magnet in, so to say, to these different elementary schools. So the one I was the principal of was a Vanguard magnet. So students that were gifted and talented were able to test in and come to the school if they were not in the zone or lived in the area. So
What
that
were
was, an interesting dynamic.
what were some of the other magnets? Was there like a
Oh
technology
gosh.
one? Was there like an
Yes.
art
Fine
school? Okay.
arts, music, theater. Some were just kind of a little of everything. They try to, you know, dip into a little of all the interest that kids might have in that and better prepare them for paths to their careers at some point, give them some interest.
So I'm just thinking about the massive undertaking. So what does change look like when you have 250 elementary principals? What is It's probably not an area superintendent. What is the next grouping above the 250? Are they grouped in 25? Are they grouped in 10?
Yeah, areas. So it's so interesting. In Houston, you did not, like the superintendent was like a rock star almost. You never really interacted with the superintendent unless you were at one of your monthly principal meetings. So and I don't mean out of touch in a negative way. It was just there were so many of us and only one of them. And so you had your superintendent and then you had area superintendents. And then underneath the area, so we had 4 areas divided by region, and then you would have school support officers underneath the principals that were sort of like your immediate supervisors as a principal. So that was the chain of command. And then it
Okay.
was so many of us that sometimes principals who had a lot of experience or were highly successful would become lead principals, and they would kind of fill in that role of supervision, especially for the newer principals that came on board. It was just
Okay.
it's a huge web of leadership.
It's interesting because so as a principal in Utah, we're going down to the Deloitte kind of leadership, and I've met with some people from Texas all over, and we lived in Texas for a year. We talked about this before the podcast, but it's just interesting to see how leadership and principalships change, like from a logistical point? I mean, you're still leading kids, but the way the
Hmm.
structure is from state to state. So one of the questions, this is not a leadership question. This is just kind of an open up, like get to know you. So let's say you win Powerball or Mega Millions tomorrow, and you have, let's not go over the top. You and your family have $10 million
Oh
just
gosh,
tomorrow. What do you do with that?
you're hitting hard right away.
I'm just
Um,
curious, just curious.
yes. Okay. So, oh my gosh. I'm immediately thinking about where we live. I don't know, open my own school, open my own early childhood center. That I would love to do something like that, provide early childcare and um, stepping stones of education for our littles. This area is so small where I live now, not in Houston anymore. Obviously, I'm in a very small community. There's not a lot of childcare, and I see a lot of need for stuff like that. And I don't mean just childcare like babysitting, but a foundation, so a pre-K type. Um, it's crazy because I immediately keep thinking about education when I don't really mean to, but that's kind of where my mind goes. Obviously, take a vacation. I don't get around to do much of that. I don't have summers very, very much anymore. So take a vacation, take my family somewhere, buy my family a car. No, it's hard. That's a hard
No, this is
question. I want
so.
to give it to people and have them, do what they want with it.
Right. So let's talk about, let's jump down that pre-K. So what does that look like in your mind? Is that from maybe 6 months to 5 years old, or is that right when they're born? You're helping families, you're helping parents, you're helping like with education, providing books, and what does that look like? Like walk me
All of
through.
all of the above. So we are to me the experience I have had, and we're going to get deep really quickly, and I don't mean to, but
No, it's totally fine.
we're in a place where I've experienced this disconnect of education. So the relationship with the school, the relationship with the community, building a connection with the school and the community so that there's trust. And I think that starts very young. And our parents are young. We've got parents who are very young, and maybe their experiences in school were not the greatest. So, how can I help repair that? Because I feel like that is such an issue, especially in some of the communities that I've served. The parents are not trusting of schools, and you can feel that in the way that kids come into the building. They don't trust either. And so that's a very big job for us. And if I can start early and get to a place where we're building this relationship while we're starting young, it's just building a foundation of success. I think that is so important and necessary.
So when you talk about that relationship, with the families, maybe not necessarily in your community, but in communities that you've been in before,
Hmm.
one of the things you and I have, so just so everybody's clear, we met on TikTok, right? So
Yes.
that's how this whole thing started. But one of the things that we have talked about previously is one of your strengths is relationships building. How do you go about that currently? And then if you started a community center, which this is obviously if you want, you had $10 million, but the idea
Hmm.
of how do you build relationships with families, especially those families who do not trust public education or just education in general,
In
education
general,
system in general.
that's a great question. I think it starts with, um, it starts with doing what you say you're going to do. I think it starts with clear communication, um, showing who you really are. I will always go back to this quote that I read from Brene Brown, or I can't remember if I heard it in one of her podcasts or if I read it, but clear is kind. And I think if you're honest with your community, and I don't mean like honest, you tell them about every nickel and dime or, the tiny little things happening, but if you're honest with them about the things that are important, um, and you're direct about it, that helps. I also think it's important to be able to listen. I know that y'all have talked about that in your podcast before, the importance of like this empathy and listening, but truly giving them your time and listening to them. Most parents, when they're feeling frustrated or angry, really just want to be heard. So I think showing that you're about that, but then you also are not all talk, there's action behind it, and you can support what it is that they need um, outside of the school building too. So not being afraid to be visible either. I think that is one of the things that I feel like has connected me the most to every community I've been in is I'm at the door every single morning greeting kids. That's how I'm going to learn all of their names. I'm also going to gain a ton of information when I see them get out of their vehicle or off the bus. What kind of mood are they in? Are they dressed appropriately for cold weather? Does it look like they've had breakfast? Who's walking them inside? Who's dropping them off today? Is it somebody different than who dropped them off yesterday? Are they crying? So I'm there. It also reassures parents that there's an administrator keeping their kids safe. I think that's really important. But I'm also out there at dismissal, so I want them to know that I'm visible and I'm present. Um, so that's, I mean, I can go on and on about that, but it's not a science. It's not a ton of things. It's simple things, but being able to show that you're there and that you're listening and that you mean what you say goes a long way.
So following up with that, right? So I love the comment, like all of those things, right? This is fantastic stuff. So it is not a science and it's not so hard, but we hear stories all the time. You know, people in schools that are nearby you or other schools where maybe the administrator, the administrative team haven't figured that out yet.
Mm,
How do you get your team on board with your vision of building relationships with community? Like, so what does that look like for
yeah,
you?
I have to do it. I have to show them. I will never ask anyone in the building or anyone that I've ever worked with to do something that I would not do. Um, it poured rain the other day, and my teachers were getting ready for dismissal, and our awning is not, it doesn't prevent us from getting wet. And a front was blowing through, so it was sideways rain. And anyway, Texas weather is, you were here for a year. It's insane. And
Yeah.
an umbrella was not going to protect us. But I will never see a teacher do something that I would never do, and vice versa. We were all out there drenched, soaking wet, carrying kids to cars so that they didn't have to run through puddles, buckling them in the back seat so that the parents didn't have to get out in the rain. And that's just the type of work that we need to do as leaders. And that's what my staff sees. It's not pretentious, it's not pretend. That is who I am. I don't know if you would call it servant leadership. It's just because I care about people. And I'm also one of those that's like, I don't ever want someone to think that I am not capable of doing something, or um, does that make sense? Like I want them to
Yeah.
see that I'm there with them. And yes, I'm their principal and I'm their leader. Um, but I can't do it without them, and they need to see that.
That's awesome. So it's funny. We've been talking for about 10 minutes and I can already tell like you're somebody that I would want to work with or for just based off of how you and I think like that's a huge because there's other people that I meet that I'm like, yeah, that would be rough, right? So I think that's a huge compliment to just you just being real
Thank you.
and being a fantastic leader. Um, so I have a question, and this just came up as I was thinking about what you said earlier. So you have a fifth grader. Does the fifth grader go to
Hmm.
school with you?
Yes. Yeah.
So I've had kids at my own kids at my
Yes.
school. How is that for you?
It's
I'm
getting
just
it's
curious.
getting interesting. It's getting interesting. So when we were in Houston, I was a principal before he was actually in school, and he ended up coming to the school I was at. So he was there until first grade, and then that COVID hit, and that's when we moved closer to be family. That's how we ended up here in Shiner, and we were separated then. So I ended up in a different district because there was not an available position for me here where we live. So that was the first time we were separated, which is okay. He needed that and I needed that. But there is something to be said about being able to walk into your son's classroom and just see him, or see him at lunch. Now he's in fifth grade, so it's not so cool anymore.
Okay.
So where we're at presently, he he is a super sweet kid, very happy to see me, still will come in after lunch and give me a hug. Doesn't necessarily want me to eat lunch with him anymore. I understand. We're getting to the part where we're starting to like girls.
Oh, okay.
So I
Okay.
think now I'm thinking about, we're at the school where I'm going to be there, hopefully through him being in high school. So I'm going to always be there seeing him at school. And so it's going to be an interesting path to watch your own kid in school. Not a lot of people get to do that. So, yeah, it's going to be
Well,
interesting.
and And the way that you had talked about it, it's funny because you and I share some similar things with our leadership where we're at is you're in a so you're the K-6 leader, but you're
Mhm.
housed with the middle school and the high school in your
Correct.
community.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm a middle school principal, but I am housed with our elementary and our high school in a virtual setting where we see each other all the time. And so it's just interesting being housed with other schools. And one of the things that that I regularly, and this is just kind of maybe my own um, self-doubt or self-talk, is I'm
Mm.
constantly in a situation where there's three administrators all making decisions and doing things, and we're all kind of under a spotlight together, where we whether we want to be or not. Do you find that happens to you as well? Like
Yeah.
it, maybe not judgment. You're just like, I might
Yeah.
have made a different
Yeah.
decision
Yeah.
based on that. Whereas in a
Totally.
typical school, you don't really have any idea what's happening at all the other schools
Mhm.
because it's just you and your admin team, and you're like, "Hey, this is what we're doing." But
Right.
when you work closely with two other principals, it's like, "Oh, that is a great idea. Are you
Yeah.
can I take that idea?" Or
Exactly.
maybe it wasn't the best idea. So
It's
how do you
validating.
manage that? How do
You
you
know, we're so
work through that?
small. We don't have I don't have an assistant principal. The high school principal does not have an assistant principal, so we really rely on each even though he's high school, 7th he's I say high school, he's junior high and high school, so 7th
Okay.
through 12th.
Okay.
Um, he does thing we're very I say we're very different personality-wise. I'm very I'm an elementary principal, okay? I wear like the I decorate the office. I'm dressed up as an elf. Um, you know, I had on big heart earrings a while ago and I said I better take those off before I get on this. So that's the difference. He's not going to wear a Grinch shirt for Christmas. Like he's very we're very opposite, but it suits us because we really share ideas. He'll do something and I'm like, okay, that's cool. How can I take that and bend it towards the elementary side? Or I'll see that he's sent out an email and I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't think to send out an email about this. Let me kind of steal that from you. We really rely on each other. Our leadership styles are different, in the sense that I'm very just, I want to be with the kids. I want to sit in the hallways. I get on the ground, but our kids are different, so their needs are different
Right.
as far as what they need from a leader. He's more of focusing on getting kids ready for college and career readiness, which I am too, but in a different way. Um,
Right.
so we really do lean on each other, and share ideas. And he's you know Christmas comes around or holidays, and he's like, "Thank you for sharing that gift with everybody, because I'll buy something for the whole school instead of just the elementary, and put both of our names on it." And so it's kind of like a partnership. And he's like, "Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that," and vice versa. He'll do something that I'm very thankful for.
That's awesome. That is awesome. It's funny when when I talk to other administrators about it and they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, it's hard to explain, but when you're in your own school and there's no other administrators around, you're kind of making decisions in a vacuum."
Yes,
And not that I want that because I do like the feedback, but every once in a while you make a decision, you're like, "Oh, was that the best?" And so it's been interesting. It's been a huge learning curve for me in a positive way, not in a negative way. It's just
I
it's a cool
love that you
experience to
just
have.
said that. I actually have never. I'm. It's so cool that you said that, because everywhere I've been a leader, I've been by myself, right? So I've only been the principal by myself. I'd have a team, but I'm the only one making decisions. This is the first time I've ever been in a place where there are two of us making decisions. So you're absolutely right about that. How lucky it do I feel that I get to share, you know, um, I have someone a thought partner, someone that I can think out ideas, or if I have concerns, he's right there. And that's very powerful. I didn't even think about that till you said that, Spencer.
It has been fun, and there are times when we disagree. I'm not saying that it's all
Sure.
roses all
Yes.
the time, and those are times when it's like, okay, we're gonna have a moment where you think this is best, I think this is best, I think this is what's best for the other thing for me too, and we talked about this before we started, is working with an elementary principal has absolutely just elevated my pedagogy game, my just getting in the weeds of teaching and learning kids.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been incredible. Okay, so next question I have for you is it's around challenges and solutions. So
Okay.
can you share a particular challenging situation that you faced as a principal how you addressed it. So it's kind of three parts, and I hate to give it all to you at one time. But
It's
then
okay.
what lessons did you learn from that experience?
Gosh. I mean, I should just use the example from today. I mean, it's not just a today issue. It's been
Okay.
happening since I've been at the school.
Okay.
Okay, so I've been here since the summer. So I was hired here at this in this district in May, started in June, met all the kids in August. I have a student that has terrible attendance. Right, um, she's young. She's a young student. I mean, about to be in junior high, but she's young, and she's making decisions for herself um, at home, and her parents are allowing her to make these decisions and supporting those decisions. And obviously you have an 11-12 year old making decisions about their future, or what they should be doing every day. Of course they're going to want to sit at home and not do anything. So I say all that to say I have had the challenge is working with this family who tells you everything that you want to hear, and you believe they're doing the right thing for their child, but they're really not. And you find every available resource that you can find, share it, give it. They use it temporarily, it falls apart, they don't see it through. The student had 18 unexcused absences since August, in danger of not having enough minutes to go on to the next grade level. Incredibly bright, has huge emotional needs that have not been met. And I don't know what the situation was prior to my arriving at this campus, but these are huge red flag things that are happening with this child. And I feel like I have done a disservice to her because I take it personally that we're in a situation with a student where she does not want to be in school. And it's a myriad of things outside that I can't control, right? But things that
Right.
I feel like I need to help with. So I get to the point today where I feel like, not today, recently, where I feel, I'd say the last couple of weeks, where I feel like I need to get outside reinforcements to get her to school. My resources are tapped out. So I'm working with the county. I'm working with mental health facilities in the area that I think that could provide support. I've worked with the local judge, and he actually was about to come to the school and start visiting with her and the family because they're in danger of truancy. And I don't know what they're like, truancy is like in Utah, but for someone this age, it looks like fines for the parents, right? I'm not really sure what it looks like beyond that, but the judge wanted to get involved because he loves kids, and he knew that by stepping in now, we could get her on the right track, hopefully. And anyway, long story short, she uh, has some behaviors, and you guys talk about consequences and behaviors and suspensions and things like that on your podcast, and it's like, what do we do in this situation? Um, so working with her on having consequences, but keeping her in school. The judge gets involved today, and she withdraws. Mom takes her out and takes her to a different district. I finally felt like I was getting to a place where I was giving her, and I say I don't mean we
But
as a school
we
family
right.
were getting her the help that she needed, and they left. This is today. They left, and they went 30 minutes down the road. Parents are divorced, so she's going to go stay with her dad. And she's going to a district, let me say, she's going to a district that I worked in prior to where I am now. They have amazing resources. They're bigger than we are. Their their resources are a little more robust than what we provide. So she is
Right.
going to hopefully get the help that she needs. I felt very helpless. So the solution, I guess, would be I got in my car and I drove to the district, and I met with the principal, and I cried, being vulnerable. And I told her, "You're getting a student that I don't want you to look at this paper and see a kid that is trouble. I want you to see that she's crying out for help. And this is what you need to do." And I didn't mean it like demanding, but I'm saying these are the
Right.
to me, like, how awesome would it be to have a principal come to me and say, "You're getting this kid. This is what I've done. These are the things you need to do to help them move forward." I mean, that's to me like the greatest foundation ever. So I hope I didn't overstep. I'm getting emotional just talking about it. But I went to her and I shared with her as much as I possibly could the things that she loves, the things that motivate her, the things that she's struggling with, the things that her family is struggling with. And I had to let it go and I had to give it to them and say,
Wha
you know, so is that a solution? I did, I reframed my thinking. I'm really big on that right now, thinking, oh gosh, what a horrible day this was. I'm reframing it and I'm saying, I did the best that I could with what I had. I've only had since August with her. And dang, we really made a lot of progress. And here we are.
Right, I think, thank you for sharing. That's heartbreaking, right? And the heartbreaking part about all of that is that the one person who and again, I don't know the mom, I don't know anybody, but the one person that could have said, "Yeah, we're gonna tackle this and do this together," just said, "You know what? I don't wanna tackle this. This is not what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to another, maybe easier situation." At least that's what it appears to be,
Run
an
away
easier
from our
situation,
problems.
run
Yeah.
away. And it creates a lifelong, basically trend of just running away from problems,
Mhm.
and um, that stinks. I don't want to get started on the truancy and attendance policy in the state of Utah.
Another podcast,
It
perhaps.
is ridiculous. Let's just say that it's ridiculous. It's pretty much non-existent. So just for those of you that watch, as parents can excuse any absence, they can do it without doctor's notes. And the truancy courts are so backed up that administrators at this point in time don't have faith in the truancy court, and so it just means kids don't go to school.
Right. And they don't pursue it because then nothing's going to happen. Wow.
Yeah. And so after 10 days, we can drop a student if there's 10 days of no contact, no whatever. And
Mhm.
then they basically get lost in child fine, essentially, is what
Right.
happens. But parents know that rule. And so they'll call in maybe every 9 days, every 10 days, and kind of excuse all the absences
Check in.
prior. And just go. And um, I actually met with some families today that were results of that, because they're coming online. Hopefully that'll work for them. So,
Yep.
okay. So this this may be connected to today. I would prefer it to be something maybe previous, but this is
Okay.
a personal growth journey question.
Okay.
So reflecting on your journey as so you've been a principal for 14 years. How long were you a teacher prior to that?
Oh gosh. Okay. So leadership 14, principal since 15, teacher and instructional coach 5 years. So not a long time. I jumped into
Okay.
leadership pretty quickly.
Okay. So, reflecting on your journey as an educator or leader, what pivotal moments have significantly shaped your approach to leadership in an elementary school setting? So you can share one or two moments, but think about like when you're like, this is your like moment where you knew that this is what you were
I
supposed to
knew
do.
this was it.
Yeah.
Okay. My first year teaching. I got into teaching a little bit later. I went to college for one thing and hated it and ended up, I actually was alternatively certified, which was, an interesting concept then, but knew in my heart, I knew I always wanted to be a teacher. So I was mad at myself for wasting time. So I jumped right back into it. And my first year, I landed at a campus in Houston at a ninth. It was a high school, but I was at the ninth grade center of the high school, North Houston, and I had a principal
What
there,
what was your what was your subject?
English language arts.
Okay. That's this
Yep.
kindred spirits. That's why we
Yeah.
connect. Okay. Me
Mhm.
too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I taught ninth grade English, mostly students who were several grade levels behind on reading. But anyway, I my first year I had a principal that was phenomenal. You see good leadership, and I didn't even realize what good leadership was. I just thought that's how everybody was supposed to be or how everybody was as a principal. She was amazing. Her name is Kalila Campbell, and she is still like I owe everything that I am to this day because of her. She was a phenomenal principal. Um, Tough, fair, loved kids, and was not afraid to do what was best for the students on her campus. And I heard her talk the talk, and then I actually got to see her walk the walk. I knew probably in the first 6 months of me being at that school that I wanted to be like her. And I've never had that feeling before. So she was there. We were there for a couple years. She left and went to a different campus. I went with her. Um, she stayed at that campus, and then her assistant principal went to another campus to help turn around and work on culture. And I felt like I would be very helpful in that. Went with him, so he was also a product of her, to a middle school, and that's where I became an administrator and started my administrative career, was at a middle school there. So he was also a product of her leadership. So I knew then, I saw amazing leadership then. And then I went into several different other positions in different schools, and I saw leadership in different places that did not compare to what I experienced before that. And so I measured myself against, as like sort of a measurement of who I was as a leader based off of what I'd observed in all the years that I was teaching, and just observing these other principles. And that's how I determined how I wanted to be as a leader. I saw that I needed to be tough, but I also needed to be a human being. I needed to support teachers by listening and not being afraid to ask them to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Um, I needed to clean up, you know, the graffiti on the walls, the throw up. It wasn't, no job was too, what am I looking for? It's not like I was not above doing what I needed to do to help. And I think that's what has helped me become the leader that I am today. And I'm not perfect by any means. I have a lot to learn, but I've seen good leaders, and I've seen leaders that are not so great. Um, and I just use that to sort of be my little guide, or like my compass and direction on how I want to be as a leader. But I can pinpoint exactly when I knew I wanted to be a principal, and that was, like I said, that year with that principal, my first year
What
teaching.
what were, and you don't need to list all of them. You
Sorry, my
talked
cat was
about,
jumping on the table.
no,
Sorry.
you're good. So you talked about fair, high expectations, held people
Yeah.
accountable. Was
Hmm.
there a specific incident that you were like, "Oh my gosh, she's amazing," or was it like a combination of multiple smaller things? Do you remember one moment where you were just
Mm.
like, "She," and this was it Mrs. What was her name again? Remind me.
Campbell. Her name is Campbell.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
Kalila.
okay. That's I
Kalila
was
Campbell. Yeah. Hmm.
Kalila Campbell.
Kalila
So, yeah,
Campbell.
is there a moment like that?
Gosh. There's so many.
And if you don't have one,
She
it's okay.
No, no, no. I remember, I have imposter syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with that, what that is. Imposter syndrome is feeling like I'm not good enough for something, or I don't mean to say I'm not deserving of the things that I've worked very, very hard, and I think hard work helps us get to the places that we earn to be at. Um, I I was a first year teacher. I felt like I was not where I needed to be. I was sucking up professional development as quickly as I could. I was following her, listening to her. Um, she would, as a new teacher, she was coming in my classroom all the time. And I'm thinking, okay, she's making sure I can keep my job for next year. Um, so one day, I'd say like in January, uh, so after the semester, starting the second semester, she called me and she said, we were part of the high school, but we were a ninth grade center. So there was a principal of the ninth grade, and then there was a high school principal. And
Okay.
she said, um, Burke, that was my maiden name. She was like, Burke, there's going to be some of us coming to your classroom in about 10 minutes. So just don't be scared. We're all coming. And I said, okay. And of course, what am I? I'm shaking, scared. Like, why are they all coming to my room? And that day, I'm trying to remember, we were debating. We had just read The Kite Runner, and we were talking about an incident that took place in the book. And some students felt very passionately about one perspective. And so I used that, and it was not in my lesson plan, as a moment to have productive conversation. And so students took sides. And anyway, that was the I just let that happen, and I knew they were coming in, and I'm like, well, at this point, it is what it is. Um, and they came in, and they were there for about 30 minutes. Did my thing. They left, and she called me back, and she was like, "Thank you for letting me do that. I just wanted to show them that first year principals uh, can do it, and you did it." And I was trying to explain to them that you were a first year principal, that you were doing such a great job. And they were like, no, especially coming from alternative certification. And so she brought them to the room, and I don't know, she had this belief in me even before I had that same belief.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, I now I'll never forget that.
That's awesome. And I would imagine, I would imagine that you kind of pay it forward and pass that along. Like as
Yes.
a
Yes.
principal and as a teacher leader in your school, you're like, "Hey,
Yes.
yeah, no, I could totally see that, right? I could just see it in the way
Yeah.
you talk and the way that you're leading." So apologies to those. It's my camera just
Oh,
switched though, but we're fine.
I love
Um,
to hire
yeah,
first year teachers because especially those coming from I don't I shouldn't say I love to hire just them, but they pull at my heartstrings a little bit more because that was me and they took a chance on me who had no teaching experience. Here I am coming into a ninth grade campus with about 900 kids and that's how I got my foot in the door.
that's awesome. That is awesome. Um, so a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. So
Okay.
one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, so you've been in education for, basically half a career, right? Usually it's about
Mhm.
30 to 35 years,
Yep.
depending on education.
Yep.
You've been a coach, you've been at high school, middle school, elementary. Um, Looking ahead, and you talked a little bit about this before, so this is kind of where you want to stay for a little while. As a leader, what are your aspirations for your school? How do you plan to achieve those? And then also, what are your personal aspirations? Do you want to move? And when I say move up, I mean, do you want to go into principal leadership where you're leading principals? Do you want to maybe uh, go into where you're teaching teachers at the college level or adjunct or something like that? What is
Yeah.
your personal and then your school kind of goals from here?
That's a great question. School goal, we're a high performing campus. So it's, some people may say, what else do you want to bring to the school that would make a difference? I think our community is changing and shifting like a lot of communities are. I think our community would benefit from an after school program, something that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but something that would be very helpful for families that work and have to figure out how their kids can be taken care of after school. We dismiss between 3 and 3:30, depending on the age group. I know a lot of those families work, so who's taking care of those kids? So an after school program that exposes them. We're a rural school district, so we're not a lot of exposure to the arts. I'd love to see a program after school that leans into different types of STEM and different types of art. Maybe taking teachers' passions. Maybe they want to show kids how to decorate a cake. Maybe they want to teach sewing. Maybe they want to teach kids how to handwrite a letter. I don't know what their passion is, but we pay them to stay after school and teach these skills to these kids that are life skills that they could take with them. I would love to develop that. I think that would be very successful and very beneficial in our community. I've seen it in other districts, not like this, but this would be tailored to the things that we don't necessarily have. So that's something I think I could help and create in the next couple of years. So a school goal that would be there. Maybe adding capacity to have enrichment periods like an art teacher. They have technology and they have library time, but I'd love to see a certified art teacher. I'd love to see um, a theater enrichment program for the kids because there are so many different ways that they can express themselves, and I just want them to be exposed to everything so they can figure out what they want
Right.
to do with themselves. Not everyone is cut out to be an athlete. Not everyone here wants to play football. I want the kids to have early exposure to music and to books and to typing. And anyway, that's the professional goal. The personal goal, I uh, I finished my doctorate last year, and I'm still not really.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was something I
That's
promised myself I would do. It was like I only have one kid. This is my second kid. It was a labor of love, I'll tell you.
Holy smokes.
Um, the
It's
hardest
on my
thing I've ever
list,
done.
and it's
Do
on my
it.
list, and people are like, "You need to get going," and
Do
I'm
it.
like, "My wife's not finished with school yet," so uh, both of us
It's
going to school at the same time would not be ideal.
yeah, I'm very thankful. I'll take a second to say I'm very thankful to my family because I could not have done it by myself. I needed a lot of support. And in the middle of I mean, my dissertation was on principal resilience, like because we all go through these like complex crises. Every principal goes through crises, different levels, different things. So mine was to connect principal, like the finding out of the study was really that principals need each other. They can't do it by themselves. They have to be able to connect and talk and share ideas. That was the outcome. But anyway, so I don't know why I even went into all that. I guess that's a passion, and I don't get a chance to talk about it very often. So it just kind of came
We'll
out.
talk
So I'm
about it in
sorry
the
about
next
that.
question. No, we'll talk about
Sorry.
that in the next question. No, you're good.
Anyway, so with that, I don't know. This is a weird time for me because I've never been in a place where I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I know that I don't want to be a principal forever. I am ready for something different, not necessarily right now. If the right opportunity were to come my way, that would be amazing. Um, Assistant superintendent, I last year I had an opportunity to serve a very, very, very small district. I had 120 kids. So I was the principal, but I also was the acting superintendent. I did that for a year. And the only reason I was very satisfied professionally, very happy there, learned so much about myself there. But this position in my community opened and I felt like I needed to be here. So that's the only reason why I left that to come here. But anyway, it did help me discover that maybe being a superintendent isn't what I want to do. So maybe teaching adjunct, to experience that. I don't know, and I think it's okay to say I don't really know. I have a lot of ideas. Do I maybe I don't know, write a book? Maybe I don't know. I don't
Do
know.
it. Do
It's
all of them.
tough.
So going back to with your rural schools,
Yeah.
in the rural community that you're in, do most of the families work outside in a bigger city? Or
Mm.
does that, I mean, so are they driving an hour to get to the closest city?
Some, some
And
are.
so,
Yeah.
okay, so you have even more of a delay from when parents get off work at 5, they're not home until 6, 6:30, depending on traffic
Yes.
and stuff?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
And
I was trying to.
we're an hour from major cities. So, like in any direction, Houston is 2 hours from us. Austin is an hour and a half. San
Okay,
Antonio is a little over an hour. So, if they work in the cities, yes, they are commuting like that. We have a lot of like remote workers, but here in Shiner, we have Shiner is small, but we have major businesses here that produce products nationwide.
okay.
And I don't know about in Utah if you've seen it, but Shiner has Shiner beer. We have a Shiner. You could look it up. It has this huge cult following almost. But Casper Wireworks, they provide a lot of the metal that newspapers are sold out of. You know, the little metal. I don't know
Yeah,
the name. There's a proper name for it, and I don't know the name, but they make those,
okay,
and they're everywhere. So if you'd go look at one of those, you'd probably see Shiner, Texas on it. So the work that's done here in this little community can be seen
everywhere.
everywhere. So you have families that work here and do work like that, but then you also have families that drive hours to work too.
Okay. So one of the things you touched on it with your dissertation, it was something that we had talked about previous to the podcast, is um, creating connections for administrators. So I want you to, because this is a passion of yours. So I'll have one more question after this one. But uh, so what does that look like to you? Why is it so important? What did you find in your studies? And I'm not asking you to summarize your whole dissertation, but like when you went out and did the research and did the surveys
Yeah.
and got all the data, what did you find? I'm curious because I have my own opinions, but I'm like,
Yeah.
what did you find with administrators and I mean, I'll just say it, the lonely
It
position of
is.
being a school
Mhm.
administrator at times. It's not always
Yeah.
lonely, but it can be
No.
because you're stuck in between two groups of people. So what did you
Yeah.
find?
You have to have a team. And I don't mean a team in that building with you. I mean, you have to have a support system. There is no other job like ours where we experience. I mean, I was in Houston when Hurricane Harvey hit. We had a student murdered. You have families that lose their lives. You have kids who are taken away by Child Protective Services. You have just all of these traumas, or you have something as a principal that maybe you had a kid demolish a classroom because their needs are not being met. That's trauma in different ways, right? So trauma is different for everyone. How you take it is different for everyone. If you don't have, and the whole outcome of my study really just said, if you don't have a support system, if you don't have a network, it is very difficult to build the resilience that you need to overcome the next complex crises. So, uh, Mine's in the back room waiting for me to tell him good night too.
Wait.
But anyway, that's really that is what, and also that principal preparation programs at university levels are not doing that great of a job getting us ready for the position either. And I don't know what it's like where you're at, but it's, you can read what you want to read, but nothing prepares you for it until you sit in that seat.
Right.
So that's really what the outcome was.
It was interesting as you were talking about all those things. It's I was thinking about the idea of I am reliving other people's trauma through. It's not a shared experience because I'm not going through it with them, but when they share that with you, you
And load
take
it.
on you take on some of that trauma, whether it's, I met 8 new students today, and each one of them had a story why they came, and I came home and my wife's like, I'm like, it's really hard to explain, but we've got, a student that just came out of day treatment, another student that's getting bullied,
Mm-hmm.
another student who's living with the
Mm-hmm.
grandparents, and you take all of that on. And this is just me meeting them for the first time. I'm like, hey, what can we do to help? I want to know all about you. Like, you don't need to tell me everything, but just what can we do to help? So um that's fascinating. I would actually love to see some of the research and some of the questions that you did for your survey,
Yeah.
and see, because I actually have a text chat with 4 principals, 2 assistant principals,
Yep.
and sometimes we just let loose in that chat, and
Yep.
it's just the frustrations and whatever, and without
You
that I
have to
don't
have
know.
that.
Right. Okay, last question, and you can answer however you want.
Okay.
You can do 1, 2, or 3. What are 3 books that you say, and if you just want to do 1 or 2, it's fine, it doesn't matter. What are a couple books that you say you have to read now? Like, add them to your list. If you're listening to the School Story podcast, what books do we need to add to our list?
The biggest book to me was a book by Pellicer, um, Caring Enough to Lead. And I always have this quote in my head called, I would always say, kind of like, what would Pellicer do? Pellicer it. How would Pellicer handle it? And it's a series of short stories about being a leader. And basically it says, you have to be the kind of leader that embraces, loves, cares, but also won't take any BS kind of scenario, right? You have to care enough to be a leader. You can't be a leader who it's it's very transparent. If you show up in a position because you're collecting a paycheck, we all know about it. And so these stories of just passion about leadership, not necessarily educational leadership, just leadership in general,
Leadership in general.
and being a good person. So Pellicer's book, and I can't think of his first name, uh, Leonard Pellicer,
Okay.
Caring Enough to Lead. And that was one of the books that we read in one of my classes, and it was so good. Actually, and this is way after I left her leadership, but so Kalila Campbell, the principal I was telling you about, her history has been with like turnaround campuses. And so she would go to these campuses and restore faith and restore scores and restore good teaching, and just would kind of go in and show what the example needed to be, how to run an effective school. And she turned around many, many campuses, and I believe she's working in the central office administration in Houston now, with special students with special needs. And she wrote a book called The Formula, and I actually just read that. I bought it quite a while ago, and it's, what is the formula to turn underperforming school around? And essentially, it's getting yourself in there, not being afraid to do the work. I believe I'm trying to think how old that book is, but it is a great read too, and it's eye opening. Kind of gives you an idea of the status of some of the schools in Houston, why she had to write a book like that, right? Like,
Right.
so those are 2 really really great books. Patterson and Callahar are who my research came through. The sort of the formula that I followed about resilience. They have good books too. I usually keep one about the resilient school. It's called Resilient School Leaders, and it's by Patterson and Kelleher. And it just basically talks about this cycle of resilience, and that you go through these steps. And if you um, build the network around you. And that's where I kind of ran my research through, was these four categories. And if you went through these four categories, you are wonderful. You're a rock star. You're in your, however many years of being a principal. If you didn't, you're a principal for 2 or 3 years and you've burned out and you're doing something else. So anyway,
Right.
those are professional books. I haven't really had much time to read anything for fun.
Fun. Yeah.
I need some recommendations for that.
I can share some with you, but I usually
But
listen to the fun ones because I don't have to
yeah.
pay as close attention. And then leadership books, I get a hard copy and I write
Oh
notes
yeah.
in them.
I have to touch
But
it. My
yeah.
son's about to read The Hunger Games, so I might have to get into that with him again.
Oh,
So
it's so good, so good.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little the whole idea of kids killing each other
Yeah.
is but the way that it's done is not super bloody and terrible. So,
Yeah.
okay, any final thoughts? I'm gonna let you finish off with anything. Do you have
Oh,
any final thoughts for our listeners?
I mean, there's there's no perfect answer, right? For us as leaders. I think if you can talk it through and you have the heart to take care of kids and you have the heart to do what's best, I don't think that can steer you in the wrong direction. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed or you need support. I mean, there's all kinds of groups on Facebook, but I'm super happy to share. Not a professional support in any way, shape, or form. I can only offer you my own perspective, but let's lean on each other and get through it together, because it's not an easy job. But let me just tell you, we've got to be in it together. The kids need us.
Um, Thank you. That was awesome, and thank you for jumping on the School Story podcast.
Oh, this is
I
so fun.
I think about the thousands of administrators scattered across the country that are doing amazing things, and this is part of why we started this, is to talk to people about the amazing things that we're doing. And I just know, like I said earlier, I would love to work with you or for you because you sound and just appear to be an amazing leader. So I know we're going to have Michelle on again at some other point. We'll talk about some other things.
Yay.
Do you want to share any of your socials so people can follow you on whatever you're on,
Yeah.
TikTok or
I'm on
Instagram or?
TikTok is the easiest way to connect with me. I'm the happy principal. It's just the happy principal altogether, because it's kind of funny because we're not always so happy, but yeah. And I that's how we connected. So I
Right.
love it. I think it's let's embrace the TikTok and get into it. The
That's
happy
awesome.
principal. Yeah.
Okay, Michelle Turk is on TikTok, the Happy Principal. Thank you so much, Michelle. If you want to stay on for just a
Yep.
minute after we stop the recording, but thank you so much, everybody, for
Thank
listening.
you.
Have a great week.